Welcome back to another Purpose Served podcast episode. Back with another one for you guys. In honor of Black History Month, we're going to continue on from, you know, telling the journey of us as African Americans in this country, and for those of you who aren't, black, to give an insight on um how these previous couple of hundred years has been for us up until this point. Now, this is going to be starting with the Great Migration and how this whole us leaving the house, the South even started, and how we even came about to being where we are at this point today, like right now in this country. Now, I last left off last week was just talking about after the Civil War and where did that leave us in this country and the opportunities that started to open up for us in this country. Now, yet again, like I said last week, I want y'all to really understand the patterns that I'm talking about, you know, because it's extremely relevant. And you guys are going to come to understand why it's relevant by the time we get to the end of the podcast. So, the very first thing that I want to start by talking about is like this all happened in the early 1900s. Like, when we started leaving the South, like in the masses, and going to like places like Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, going out west and stuff like that, in search of opportunity. And for those of the people, that stayed in the South after slavery was abolished and after the Civil War, you know, they tended to the land that was left over for them from their slave masters or the land that they was able to buy, the little land that they have for themselves. Now, as for the people that left to go to, the north or the west, like particularly, I'm not even going to lie, mainly I'm going to be talking about um, the people that left and went to the north. Now, the people that left and went to the north, they they went there for industrial jobs, like jobs in factories and stuff like that. And this is the stuff that I was talking about, which to me personally, you know, anything's better than being a slave. But still, when you got stuff that's still close to that kind of mindset, that kind of work, and you're getting treated like, pretty much the same, but you're just getting paid for it at this point. To me, it's just like, what's the difference? It's a little bit of difference, but it's not that much. The treatment was still there, even for the black people that went up to the north. It's not like the white people was just like, yeah, come on, like we're friendly up here. It was still kind of like the same thing. So, in essence, I talked about this in the previous podcast with our involvement with the Civil War and how it's just strength in numbers, and it's just like it's better if they're on our side rather than being against us. And in the sense, it was like it seems like the same situation where the North was exploiting us yet again, for labor use, and with working in factories, doing stuff like that anybody can do, but not really letting us take a leap into things where we can take charge, where we can create like our own, like ourselves. We still had a lot of ways to go to get to that point. And even in the South around this time, you got Jim Crow starting to get cooked up and Jim Crow laws and stuff like that. I recently just learned the origins of Jim Crow and how pretty much Jim Crow was the name. I think the guy that originated it was Thomas Wright, and he was a white guy that would put black paint over his face and then going perform as if he was a black person, and making it like an entertaining thing, and not even getting an actual black person to play a black person, but you got a white person playing a black person and acting pretty much a fool, yo. You know what I'm saying? Putting black paint on, making your lips mad pink, and that started brewing up like I guess the stereotype, with the watermelon, the grape juice, all of this BS. You know what I'm saying? This is like this is the beginning of all of that. And pretty much like Jim Crow was just that character. The black painted face was Jim Crow, and that soon escalated to Jim Crow laws like in the South, which reigned like really prominent. And I can't speak on God honest truth to this day if you know racism racism like actually like applies when it comes to like I don't know when it comes to the South and what's going on. You may hear of it here and there from people that live in the South, but from my personal account, I don't know, so I can't necessarily like really speak on something like that. You know what I mean? But um, in the South, you had different type of rules and a different type of lifestyle that was lived by African Americans in the South versus how they were when they were in the North. Like you had things like you can't. I seen something like where you can't walk on the same side of on the street as like if you were black and you seen a white girl, or if you seen like a white person and you're walking down the street and they're on the opposite end, you can't make direct eye contact with them. Um, it's a lot of different things. Like I've been talking to like my grandmother, a lot about like her childhood, and for me, it's very important. And I started to put an emphasis on knowing what my history is. So those that come after me, such as my kids and my grandkids, they need to know what history came before me as well, and who were their predecessors, and that's going to me instinctively narrow that path of who they are and where and what they should be doing and where they should be going. Um, so with my grandmother, like she was just breaking down like how it was like in the South, like for her. She lived down in I think she said Whiteley, Georgia, up until she was like 9 years old, and she it was just completely different than what she said when she came up north, and and how my family eventually started in Newark, New Jersey, but you know in the South, she said it was a completely different like lifestyle. Like for the most part, they going outside playing, not wearing shoes, only to like school or to go to church. But outside of that, they didn't have no shoes. They was out playing, having a good time. But it was yes ma'am, no ma'am to white people and stuff like that. But she experienced like a lot of racism while growing up in the South. Like extreme forms of racism. Like one of the instances that made her leave and come up to North Jersey, that she was telling me about is she had a particular experience where a couple of white guys broke into her house and came into their house looking for her dad, my great grandfather, and he wasn't there. And at the time, it was my aunts, my uncle, and stuff like that, and they pretty much had to hold the fort down while my great grandfather was gone. But just imagine how terrible that feeling must have been and how scary that situation actually is when you got the oldest person in the room being like, a 12, 13-year old, and these white people with guns are coming in looking for something to somebody, and you're helpless, you're hopeless in that situation. And luckily God, was on their side, for them to get out that situation. But ultimately that situation right there led up to, my family roots having that great migration from the South and to the North, to North Jersey. Now, this kind of proved my theory wrong. I'm not even gonna lie, cause I said on a previous podcast that for the most part it's one or two things that I said why African Americans left around that time to leave the South, and it was either joining the military or finding an opportunity in a job up in the North or going to the West. But these are one of those instances where lives was in danger, and that was the main reason why she had to leave or they had to leave. And she also told me that the it was a weird transition when she got to North Jersey, and how pretty much Like things was totally different. Like now, she's around way more black people. She's she's going outside, with no sneakers on and no shoes, and everybody like, yo, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? Like, where are your shoes at? And getting picked on, bullied, stuff like that because like they was different. They grew up in the South. Like another thing that I wanted to mention that she said, and I heard something similar to this from another gentleman that I spoke to who grew up in the South around like the segregation times, where you had to, if you was leaving somewhere and your destination is you cutting across a neighborhood that black people weren't allowed, you better know how to run, and you better know how to run fast. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get caught in them neighborhoods where you not supposed to be in at all. You know, and it's really really sad that that was even the case. That, you know what I'm saying, you walking through a neighborhood and there's a high chance that they gonna murk you, they gonna hang you, they gonna like, beat you up, beat you, shoot you, do whatever, stick the dogs on you, do whatever they want, do whatever they please to do, because these are the laws and these are the rules that was governing down there. And they would be damned if, like, things was to be integrated. They didn't want that. They didn't feel as though we were on the same level as them. We were incompetent. Like even with stuff like I said, the Jim Crow shows where eventually black people started playing themselves. But why are they wearing black paint and got the whole makeup on and the whole nine, and then they're tapping and acting fool themselves, for entertainment. Like I said, I want you guys to really pay attention to the things that I'm saying right now, because I'm saying them for a reason, and it's going to come full circle when it's all said and done. But going back to my grandmother and her moving to Newark, at a young age, and how pretty much like she learned the fight back mentality once she moved to Newark, and how to defend herself, not letting anybody get over on her and stuff like that. So my grandmother is hilarious, you know what I mean? Very smart woman, beautiful woman, but she's tough, man. I got a tough grandma, but um pretty much like she was taught the ropes of the neighborhood and everything, but then once she got accustomed to defending herself, to just her environment, then it was just like, okay, I could thrive in this. You know what I mean? She said at first, when she first came from the South to to Newark, that it was a culture shock. You know, she wasn't used to a lot of things, and at first she didn't like it. She actually hated it. You know what I mean? But once she grew accustomed to Newark and the lifestyle of just being in the city, that it was just like the South was just like, I'm not going back. Uh, and as crazy as it sounds, like she was also telling me how like her grandparents, pretty much owned a funeral parlor and stuff like that. So like it was actually inside their house, and she had like crazy stories about seeing like a body in there and stuff like that, which I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. But um fast forward, like I said, back to her being in Newark and her time in Newark, which ultimately started, my great grandparents started that lineage of just us being in North Jersey, being in Newark, and then branching off and thriving from there. But for the most part, with the Great Migration and people leaving, like I said, what I noticed from the research that I did, a lot of the stuff started happening. It says like between like the early 1900s and 1970, which between that time period of pretty much 65 to 70 years, that we had like two major wars. We had the World War I, we had World War II. We also had Vietnam. There's a lot of stuff going on this planet, and oftentimes, like I said, it just seems like us as black people has been being exploited literally to this very day. As if we're pawns in a bigger game at works. And with the opportunity, like I said, war presents opportunities, before and during. But when war is done, it's done. There's no more opportunities nowhere. And like I said, it's just that you're creating, and I talk about this on previous podcasts, where out of like when you have order, chaos is brewing up. That's just what happens. Everything has a counterpart. And when you have a bunch of chaos, order is brewing up from that as well. But with us being in a manufacturing business for producing products, weapons, all of this stuff that they need made, for preparations for a war, it's like we've took advantage of that, and from us taking advantage of that, we took advantage of that, but it's like as if they took advantage of us. So this is how I'm going to put this, right? So sorry about that. My headphones just be acting kind of wacky sometimes. But when we was going to these jobs, working, alongside white people and stuff like that, where we lived, the areas and everything was most of the time different. And eventually, due to us being around and being in certain areas, that made other nationalities like move away, because of this stigma that seems to follow us, that when black people come around, there's trouble brewing. You know what I mean? And I didn't live in that time, but I could only imagine how people thought of black people, around that time. So imagine, with what you see in a newspaper or what you hear on the radio and stuff like that. It's just that you're gonna look at black people with a negative connotation if you don't feel bad for them. It's one or the other, you know. So imagine you 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 move into you got these black people starting to move into your neighborhood, from coming from the south, from slave roots, and this is like, at this time it's like 60, 70 years removed. Not even that. You're not going to look at them as if like, how we get looked at now. It's totally different. We're still That's just like the beginnings of the oppressions starting to become aware to other people, and people starting to understand that our treatment in this country just isn't right. But this is the beginning. This is literally the very, very beginning. And I don't know. It feels as though like a lot of this stuff to me personally is systematic, and it's like it's set up. Now we're going to fast forward past all this, like the Great Migration, and we're going to come full circle to present day. And I really do personally feel as though that a lot of things that white people were doing to us, we have now developed a weird awareness and coming over this weird self hatred that we have about ourselves. And in regards to, like I said earlier, where if in certain hoods that you go to, you can't walk through. You know what I'm saying? And like I said earlier, with certain white neighborhoods before, you couldn't walk through. There's something about making contact now, in certain black environments that just seem like a threat. You know what I mean? And it's not like they just was born and all of this stuff started happening. It's just because of circumstances which led us to still be in situations that we're currently in. And I don't know. Um, even with from the entertainment aspect, I think that this content that even that I've been delivering with this podcast, this is not something that um black people will look at as, you know what I'm saying? Like this is it. Like we we've been bred up with, like, having real, like, even nowadays, like, toxic music, like, you know what I mean, with the stuff that they promote and everything. Like, I ain't gonna sit here and say that I don't listen to that music, because I do. I like it. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, when you think about, white people music, it don't have the same message, it don't have the same vibes. It's like completely different. It's literally as if, like, the vibe that's given off from us nowadays is just like kill to be killed, but by us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to war with each other. Why is that the case? I don't. I think that this is, like I said, this is a programming that's bigger than all of us, bigger than black versus white. But black people have to understand where they stand in this whole, I don't even know what word to use, juxtaposition. And I feel as though by just doing my part, like, even like just doing these podcasts, it's just shedding light on the information that I've come to find out for myself, that not only black people start to, you know, get an interest in their history and awareness for themselves and know what we are really capable of against all odds, but also on the other end, for, white people or anybody, that's not black, to see what we've been going through and what we're still going through, and the battles that we're still in the middle of now, and we're still fighting and trying to win. And I I I definitely feel as though I was thinking about, like, the messages that I've been putting across these previous podcasts, and also um my me me shedding awareness on, our history and our culture. That's something that, I haven't done. A lot of it has been more about, universal information and universal vibes, and not necessarily about anything in particular with black people or just being black. But I feel as though it's very important that to even talk about the shed light on, because everything starts to me with a form of thought, but most importantly, having a conversation with somebody else about matters, stuff that the stuff that matters, stuff that care, stuff with substance. You know what I mean? We talk about a lot of stuff that don't matter. Like, we talk about a whole bunch of stuff that don't matter, which makes us involved in a whole bunch of stuff that don't matter as well. And for me personally, that started, like, eating away at me, because it started feeling like, you know, when it's all said and done, and, you know, I reached my end and God calls my name, what did I do while I was here? What purpose did I serve while I was here? How did I help people? And did I contribute to people's lives for the better, or did I contribute for the worse? Now, a lot of people don't like thinking about that kind of stuff, because it just, I don't know. It oftentimes could be one of those things where it could be too much to think about. You know what I'm saying? But in order to just keep, forwardly progressing, it's important to always keep that narrative. And especially like me knowing now my history and where I came from, and really feeling really blessed that my predecessors and my ancestors literally would have died to be in the situation that I'm in right now. So you best believe I'm gonna take advantage of it to the fullest. And I really feel as though, all in all, that we're gonna be building blocks towards progression. We're already doing it, but it's going to take time, and also it's going to be also up to people to keep spreading awareness on what's going on and doing something about it instead of turning a blind eye and acting like nothing's going on. And people nowadays are really starting to step up, but the most important thing is just don't do it when you're reacting to something, or when something tragic happens, like a cop killing a black person or any of that. Like, we got to always stay on top of it, you know what I'm saying? And just be sure to, like, especially if you're an African American, know your history. Know your history. You don't want your predecessors, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, to pass away and you don't know nothing about them. You don't know nothing about your history. And what are you gonna do about your kids when they want to know about your history? You should start, shaping that up right now. you know. And I've been really really grateful that I'm even understanding, the struggles that my grandmother went through, at an early age, all the way up, through her life, presently. And it feels as though, like, a piece of me, a piece of her, a piece of my mom, and everything is just flowing through me. And I don't know. That's why, as of late, I've been feeling like a lot of the stuff that I've been doing has been bigger than me, and that's why I'm doing it in the first place, because I know that it's bigger than me. And for those of you that's watching, serve your purpose. This is the end of the podcast episode. I hope you guys enjoy. Please like, share, and subscribe. I love y'all. Peace out. Deuces.